What's your earliest memory of Sister Mary Logan?
My earliest memory actually goes back, not in particular to Mary Davis Logan, but to the family. We lived in Briar Hill, and we lived across the street from the steel mills, across the street from the railroad track, in the buildings where the European immigrants first came to settle when they came from Europe. So as they were leaving out and homes were being prepared for them in nicer districts, some of the Southerners, like my family, my father, were coming up, and they were coming into this area looking for those good jobs in the steel mill. Well, my first memory is because we lived in a building that faced the West Federal Street, and they lived in a building, well, it was a series of apartments in that building, but they lived in the rear apartment, and this is the Davis family. And you had to get to their apartment from the back. You had to get to our apartment, which was upstairs over what was previously a store. In our building, the store was on the first floor, and the family lived upstairs. So when you come down our steps, there was like a little, almost triangular shaped courtyard that was brick, and the Davis family lived at the other end, across from us, almost like at top of the triangular point. My first memory is when Mr. Davis died. Mary's father, George Davis, died, and we were one family who had a telephone at that particular time. So their mother, and her name Colleen, I'm not sure how to pronounce the mother's name, but the mother called, and I answered the phone, and she said, "Will you go please tell the kids that their daddy died?" So I jump up. I'm about to go tell the kids what their mother said, the family. And my mother said, "Well, who was that?" And I told her. And so she said, "Well, okay, I'll take it from here." So she went to tell the family what happened. So this had to be in the late 40s, I think it was. So that's my first memory that stands out about the Davis family.
How much of an age difference is there between you two?
I have to look and see. I forgot how old she was. But I know she used to babysit us at one particular time because Mary was afraid of cats, and one of my brothers used to tease her about the cats. I'm not sure if that was my brother June or my brother Ronnie. So, pardon me?
I'm sorry. I was saying, what kind of influence did she have on you in the early days?
Well, in the early days, I really can't remember the influence that she would have had. But what I think about is that my mother and Mary Davis Logan attended the same church. So for years, Zion Hill was our home church. I can't remember exactly when Mary and them were a part of Zion Hill, but they were there for a long time also. And but one date that stands out in mind is when it's in around 1950, because Zion Hill was first located. It was like it probably was a storefront building on West Federal Street, and I think it started off as a prayer band, and that's where my mother would walk us to church with the kids. And I remember at one point, 1950, because Larry was the baby, and she wanted somebody to help carry this big fat baby to church. Later on, the church moved a little further up on Oakland, and after that, they moved to the site where they are now on Jefferson Street on the north side. So my mind goes in particular to Mary being a part of the senior mission. And that's something that's important because the Zion Hill Senior Mission was a forerunner and many of the mission events. So Mary and her husband, James Norman Logan, they were a very active part of that mission and a very active part of the success of the mission. And the reason I like to discuss that is because at that time, these ladies would go into the homes. They would cook, clean, do whatever it was necessary for people, because we didn't have the home care makers coming in. We didn't have the nursing homes at that particular time. So these mission ladies were active in fulfilling their mission of helping people. So Mary was a very active part of that for years. So that's something important about the history, that goes back with Mary Logan and the family and a connection with our family.
So who moved onto Crandall Street first?
Mary and their family were on the east side for a while. When they left Briar Hill, and I'm not positive about this, but they would, I don't remember the year, but they went to the east side of town. We were they left before we did. And when we left, we went to the south side of town. This is the Coleman family. So we lived on Parkwood Avenue, and it had to be about 1959 we were on Parkwood Avenue, still going to Zion Hill Baptist Church. And the Logans were on the east side, and I can't think of the name of the street at that particular time, but they were on the east side. Later on, they moved to on the north side on Crandall Avenue. And by that time, that's some years later, I was on Crandall Avenue.
So what kind of family-related things would you all do together when you visit?
One of the things that I think about, we were all church associated, and sometimes my mother would have ice cream socials. That was popular in our little 4-room apartment, and we'd take up the beds and everything, and we'd have an ice cream social. We might have what we call, I think it was a sock hop or something like that, and the neighborhood kids would come. And it was fun. We did, fun things like that.
What kind of projects did you all work on together at Zion Hill?
Well, one of the things I think of mainly is the mission, and the reason I stress the mission because the mission was a forerunner for other missions throughout the city. And what the Zion Hill mission did, they started these programs where they might have an event like the 7 Last Words of Christ, and they would invite young ministers to come in and talk about that. And then they'd have their teas, and it was always really laid out so very nicely. And they had different members who did different things, and there was one member who had a gorgeous tea set. She had a beautiful tea set that she would bring in. Others might make the pretty sandwiches. I don't remember in particular what Mary Logan did. My mind escapes me, but they were all a part. They were a strong mission group. They were the forerunners for many of the groups, mission groups in the city. What Zion Hill Mission did, the others followed in, other mission groups, and that circle followed in and did. Especially, like I said, with the church events, with the inviting young ministers in to speak. That became a very popular thing to do.
And what kind of sense of humor did Sister Logan have?
Well, I think she was kind of a quiet sister of humor. She had a way of smiling. Always a very pleasant smile that I can think of right now.
Do you recall your last conversation with Sister Logan?
I talked to her a few months before her daughter died, and I can't recall what we talked about. But I remember talking to her No, I talked to her. Every now and then we would see each other at a church event somewhere, but, mostly just being glad to see one another, and I can't remember anything in particular that we talked about.
Okay. Is there anything else? Oh, excuse me. Yes. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about Sister Logan?
Well, I came from a big family, and there was, I can't think of what it was that I wanted to mention about her. I can't think of it right now. But she's a nice, pleasant person. She was always someone who was nice to be around. Someone always had a nice smile on her face. So, like I said, we go back a long way when you think about it, to the late 40s. So it's just, they were good people to know. The Davis family and the Logan family. And I did want to mention, like, in that particular house that we lived in, the Pondexter family lived on the first floor. So the Pondexters, as I recall, is related to Mary and them. So we developed a strong bond over the years, family-wise. So they're a good family to know.
Okay. That's the end of our recording, unless you had anything else you wanted to add.
I can't think of it right now. I know there was something I had wanted to mention. But I know that we go back a long way, and when I thought about my brother Larry being born in 1950, I said, okay, so I know we knew them before 1950, and the first recall is when their father died. So we go back to that time era when her father died.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time, and it sounded great. I think it was a great recording. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Scott.
All right. You have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.